Oh, Joe's here. Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our October Hell's Kitchen Clinton Land Use Committee meeting. We are conducting the meeting by virtual status, given the governor's ongoing and renewed executive order to allow for us to conduct business this way. Welcome to everybody. This is being live streamed and recorded, and it will be available on our YouTube channel at a later date. Anybody here from the public who wishes to speak, the process is that we introduce our activities. The committee will have a discussion, open it up for discussion from members of the public. Then we'll return to committee for our final comments and vote and action. Tonight we have 4 things on the agenda. We have a budget recap review. We have a look at the Block 4 capital expenditure for a discussion amongst the group. We have a Capstone project for discussion amongst the group, and we have an update from the Sanitation Task Force. So, is there anybody here? So I'd like to maybe just get us started with quick introductions of the committee members. So I'm Paul Devlin, I'm the co-chair along with JD. So JD, you want to say hello?
All right.
David, you're muted.
Yep, David Solnick, member. We're going through introductions?
Just introductions right now. Yep. Yadira.
Yadira Jimenez, and I'm one of the newer members.
Thank you. Frank.
Frank Halzibiak, member.
Teddy.
Theodore Arenas, member.
Chris.
Chris LeBron, member.
Joe.
Joe Restuccia, member.
Brian.
Brian Weber, public member.
You say with almost disdain there, Brian. And of course, I want to thank Janine for joining us as staff member from the district office. So to begin tonight, this is the only item that we have a formal vote required. And we're going to talk about the budget task force. As people know, the budgeting cycle for the city, we are looking at the fiscal year 2024 budget. We are the earliest stages of bringing items forward for consideration for the budget process. It starts at committee level with community boards, then goes to our task force. Full board will then approve a recommendation of items required and needs from this district, and then that goes into city council discussions for the budget. Gina, if you could share a screen with that document. At last month's meeting, we had a recap of the issues from the previous fiscal years, what was approved and not approved, how the funding continued on. There are different line items. We have a capital budget, we have continuing budget, and we have expense items. This list that you see on the screen now is a recap of the discussion from last month. What we need to do tonight is to vote on this list to send it to the budget task force of the community board for them to take it into consideration. Can everybody see that? Or do you want me to read through the line items? Ginny, blowing it up is great, thank you. So it looks like I might just quickly run through the capital budget requests. Are the capital subsidy for the multifamily preservation loan program, to get upgrades of technology for DOB. For continuing support, it's to continue funding efforts at blocks 4 and 5 of the Hudson Boulevard area. And then for expense budget items is for, we have made this request in the past, funding for DOB inspectors to be trained in special district rules, because we find here in the Special Clinton district, we have a lot of different issues than other parts of the city. And our newest item that we're adding in is a HPD getting additional funding for their emergency repair program because of our continued problem with landlords allowing buildings to deteriorate to the point where they can be demolished, to sort of bypass the anti-demolition rules of the special district. So we want to get more funding in to HPD to stop that from happening in our special district. Does anybody have any questions or topics they want to talk about on this? Joe?
Yeah, so on the second bullet, we should rephrase that to do initial caps on demolition restriction and say checkoff box. So that, because that's how DOB does it.
You're saying on the capital budget, second bullet, the provide technological upgrade, that one?
Yeah. Use initial caps on demolition restriction. And then I think we should note it applies to 4 districts, Paul: Clinton Special, West Chelsea, Hudson Yards, and part of Garment Center.
Okay, because it does say on there, a square to be filled in as a yes or no.
Yeah, I think, but it's actually a checkbox that they use in their internal program.
All right.
And then the other item is on the expense budget, funding for inspectors. I would say provide funding for inspectors to be trained in special district regulations for special district enforcement. Special district zoning regulations.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Chris?
I just want to thank you. Joe and Paul, is that the latter in reference to the demo by neglect situation that we have in a special zoning district?
That last bullet, the last bullet point is yes. So the emergency repair funding budget for HPD. HPD has funding available for that sort of work, but there's just not enough in there to protect us.
Of course. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that's exactly what that was for. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, Joe, did your hand go back up?
Yeah. So that last bullet, Paul, I would say increase funding for HPDs, and it's all initial caps, emergency repair program, parentheses, ERP, to ensure owners will not allow properties. They got to be a little more specific as to what it is. Otherwise, they're not going to get it.
Joe, if you have specific, I mean, I'm writing down what you're saying, but if
no, I'll shoot it to you. No problem.
Yeah, all right. And copy Bob on it for me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bob
and Pato.
Oh, because Bob's doing this. Got it. Right. Got it.
He's the one taking the lead on this for us, because he's done it so many other times.
Yep.
But he's not here tonight. All right. Any other discussion? Anybody else want to say anything else about this? Is there anybody in the public who wants to say anything about this? Please raise your hand if you do, and you'll be migrated over. I'm not seeing a hand go up in the audience. So I would entertain a motion to adopt this language to proceed to the budget task force as recommendations from the Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee.
Moved.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second?
Second.
Yadira. So Yadira, okay. Yadira. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Anybody present not eligible? Then the motion passes unanimously. Awesome. Great. Next on the agenda then, we are going to talk about the Block 4 Capital Fund.
Quick point of order, Paul. I'm just checking. Joe, are you PNE? Because isn't 500 West 52nd one of your property?
No, Joe, you muted.
I'm sorry. I was going to ask how I handle that. I should probably vote in favor of everything except for number 1, P&E, but we didn't doing the vote that way. So I was going to ask Paul afterward. Thank you, James.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, James. Or you can even vote P&E on the whole thing in the bill. It would still pass and get through the process.
Right, but generally in the budget, I normally vote in favor of a P&E for items X, Y, and Z. That's what
okay. All right, cool. Thanks, James. All right, the next issue is the Block 4 Capital Fund. Many of you may recall that Tishman Speyer has came to us a few months ago with a presentation on a concept of how they want to redevelop the block adjacent to Block 4. There is discussion about taking that townhouse that's on the block and eliminating it and using eminent domain to create a shared street or a street path there. In exchange for that, they're looking for additional FAR and an upzoning to get that additional FAR at the building. They made their presentation to us. We sent them a pretty lengthy letter describing all of the issues that we had and what we would like to see as they come forward. We're anticipating that they are going to come back to us shortly with a plan of some sort for the redevelopment of that site. One of the things that they raised in their presentation is that they would make a contribution to community items that needed additional funding. And they had a number of $2 million in that proposal. What we've done is go through, and we had a list previously of capital improvements we wanted in that area. We've subsequently met some of the leadership, Joe and JD and me and Bob, have gone through to rebuild that list of capital improvements to see if these are the things that we would want to have included in this. And so and Janine, if you want to share screen on that, that would be great. So what we've done is come up with a list of potential capital improvement items and try to get as many price tags put on it as possible so that we can be prepared for that discussion when they come back to us with their formal presentation and proposal. We want to be prepared for what are the capital fund issues that we would like to get from that. So this is a draft of that list. I want people to think about if this list is too long, too short, too inclusive, too exclusive, whatever that might be. And Janine, if you could blow it up just a little bit more. And again, many of these things have already been on this list for a while. There's a couple of new items. So Joe, if you don't mind, I'm going to just quickly run through the list and then go from there. Is that all right? So we see a lot of tree pit remediation and looking at resizing them, making sure they're all standardized, bump outs on the streets. People should know that there are currently temporary bump outs and permanent bump outs. The temporary ones are less expensive. So for the same dollars, we could get more of them. The permanent ones are more expensive and we'll get less of them.
Paul, I'm a little confused as to what we're even doing here. Like, they have not come with an application, and we are in this public discussion signaling what we want them to spend money on when we told them that in our very specific letter that it is not the way to proceed. I mean, I feel like, are we negotiating against ourselves here?
No, what we're having here is a discussion with the committee, and this is a discussion, not a vote. There is no action being taken tonight. This is get everybody on the committee to have some input as to what capital improvements are desired in the district in which they are offering. They had made an offer to make capital improvements.
That assumed, so there's an underlying assumption that we're going to accept an offer for money. I think we have to be very careful in the public realm in which we're doing in a public meeting, having this kind of discussion, because it signals to them that we're willing to get bought out for a higher price. I think that's a real serious, just a tactical error. And to even say tactical error, I don't like doing that in public, but I'm going to say it.
Well, I mean, I think that this discussion has happened at previous meetings. They did say they were going to give us, there was an offer of a specific dollar amount for capital improvements in the district. So to put that dollar amount into perspective for other committee members so they can understand what that would actually mean and to give it some thought, so that if they come back with a proposal with a dollar amount in it, that people can understand how those dollars may or may not be spent. This is a conversation about what are some of the capital improvements that we would want to see in that area? What are the costs associated with some of those things? And it's a list of items. It's not to say that if they give us $2 million, we're going to buy 15 tree pits. this is in order to make capital improvements across this area, what are some of the costs associated with those sorts of improvements?
Where did it originate from, the list?
This list came from, this is a list that has been coming through this committee for many years.
I have never seen this list before.
I was told that this has been through this committee a number of times.
Nope.
I haven't seen this list either. Just
All right.
for point of
No.
reference.
I mean, I'm a bit confused by it too. I think we're putting the cart in front of the horse here. I mean,
Absolutely.
when Tishman came to us about block 4, we were sort of pretty clear about this is a mapped roadway. You can't negotiate for more FAR on something you're already obligated to do. So I'm not, I'm a bit bewildered as to, I appreciate this list here, and I think there's all this great stuff, but I don't understand why we're negotiating this at this point, at this stage.
Well, as I said, we aren't negotiating this at this stage.
Yes, we are. By talking about it, they will watch
We
this.
are.
They will watch this video.
This
And
is
we are
public
talking about it
record.
among ourselves. We have a list with buy trash, $160,000 worth of trash cans. The idea that we're even having that discussion is, I find it absurd, Paul. Honestly, I'm like, where did that come from? I've never ever seen any of this stuff before, ever.
Would the co-chairs move, accept the motion to table this for another session?
JD, do you want to contribute to this conversation?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I lost everybody for a second. First of all, there is no negotiation going on. There are no decisions. There's no vote. The Hell's Kitchen Hudson Yards bid would be the agency, or whatever you want to call it, that would be dealing with all this. I think they drew up the list in past discussions about potential community benefits. That's all. So the idea was, rather than wait till the last minute, let's throw something out so everybody can start getting an idea, can propose new things, can start thinking about it. That's all this is about. There's no vote, there's no nothing. If you want to wait until they get certified and then come to us and then make a decision, okay. But I don't see anything wrong with just discussing some potential benefits just in case. That's all. If you don't want to talk about it, fine.
I feel super
that's all this
uncomfortable
was.
on anything that says $100,000 in Christmas lights, you can buy us off. I feel so uncomfortable talking about this like this.
Well, Joe, I'm not.
Nobody's buying us off, Joe. Nobody's buying us off.
No,
Nobody's
but
buying
the
us
point
off.
is, this is a public document now. It's on our YouTube channel forever. This will be looked at. And it sets the stage for how we manage this. And it's nothing like we've never up front said, here are, because we don't even know the nature of this thing. It's still all over the place. And we had a huge public discussion about being against the idea of bonusing a map street.
I think this is one of those lists, had it not had a price on, or had it not been itemized with prices,
Right.
that this committee would feel more comfortable and be able to do its due diligence with a walkthrough of that specific area, block 4.
Right.
So that way we can at least see contextually what it is that is needed prior to even looking. So at least we understand where top priorities are, and we can work with the transportation committee. We can work with the parks committee and do this a little bit more holistically. I'm uncomfortable with the itemization and any further discussion about this because once again, the internet is forever. This is YouTube, and people do watch. Members of the media do watch, and so and even critics of this community board or community boards outright watch. And I think it's best that we understand holistically what is the needs and do walkthroughs before we continue any conversation. And that continuation of conversation should be sans itemized prices.
I mean, like the idea that we're having something talking about channelizing traffic on Dyer Avenue, which is a whole major discussion we've had with the Port Authority for a number of years, and they are proceeding to do. And then we put a price tag on it from a streetscape study, creates an impression that we're trying to put together a itemized shopping list as opposed to a general discussion about anything. So I would take the document down. I feel it's the wrong way to go.
JD, you're muted. JD, you're muted.
Sorry, Paul. I think you've made your point, both of you, but first of all, this is not our list. This is coming from the bid. This is their discussions, not ours. So let's make that clear. This is nothing we're signing on to. This is just if in the future, if there's any discussion, here are some things that would be proposed. There may be other ideas. And here's what they may cost. Who knows?
And the
But
reason,
I'm fine if we want to.
yeah, and Joe, the reason we did put numbers on, and I hear what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing with you that, you know, this should not look like a negotiation. And if it's coming across as it looks like a negotiation, then it's not being done the right way. The reason that we wanted numbers on here is to give committee members some perspective of what these things cost. We have things on here that are $10 million. I mean,
But that starts out with the assumption that we're negotiating a settlement on money. And I think that's the problem. I just move that we take the document down and table it at this juncture. I feel I'm making that as a formal motion, Paul.
I second that motion.
All
I
right.
second it as well.
All right.
But Paul and JD, I understand
So hold on.
why
please,
it was
okay, thank
presented.
you. JD, I wanted to, during the discussion on the motion, I wanted that screen taken down. All right. So we can have a discussion on the motion to table this discussion to a later date. And as part of this discussion, Chris, you had made the recommendation. I would like to have people talk about if they want to do a walkthrough, organize a walkthrough.
Yes, it's in addition to a walkthrough, it should be guided by the bid as presented to us. This is, in my opinion, this document should have been presented by Bob Manfato and the bid, because if we're doing the work of the bid, then it can potentially expand beyond that of Hudson Yards and into Hell's Kitchen itself. And I don't want that.
Yeah, but
I don't want the conflation.
All right, well,
also-
let me just hold on, Joe, please. Let me just address that statement, because first of all, Bob Manfato was on the agenda for tonight and he's not present. So I am presenting and he was supposed to be presenting. So I apologize for not clarifying that at the outset. And in terms of any capital improvements and the budget any funding that comes in for that, we are looking at perhaps a larger geographic area than the HYHK bid. So Joe, did you want to add?
Yeah, I participated in those discussions initially, and the idea was that whatever happened with Block 4, whatever community benefit was derived from it would not be limited to Block 4, but be somewhere in the main part of our district, meaning specifically like 9th Avenue, for example, kind of thing, like where it's not been heavily affected. The bid has not been able to focus on 9th Avenue, right? But irrespective, thank you, Paul, for bringing it, but I've never seen something with dollars and cents on it.
No, that I will take blame and responsibility for that, because I wanted people on the committee to understand what these items cost, because not everybody Joe hasn't done this as many years as you have and isn't as familiar with what a bump out costs and what a trash can costs and what a connector to the Highline costs, and just to put some numbers on it to give people some perspective. That was the reason for the numbers. It was not meant to be.
In our prior discussions, we never talked about trash cans or Christmas lights. It's really bad. It's just really bad perception. That's all.
Well, all right. So you'll notice that there are other bigger things on this list. You have pointed out the smaller items like trash cans and Christmas lights, but there are also much larger items on here that would be capital improvements needed in the area if a thousands of people come into a building there, what impact that will have on our neighborhood.
It is not about this location. It's about community benefit, not about this particular location. That's not what was being discussed ever. It's not about Block 4. So I don't know how I feel like we've just lost some thread on this.
I think
Right. So the motion is the motion on the table to table this discussion until a future date, and it's been first and seconded. So all in favor of tabling this discussion, say aye.
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 All opposed to tabling discussion? All right, we will revisit this. Chris, you had mentioned that you wanted to do walkthroughs with the bid. Can you take the lead on helping to organize something like that?
I actually have the free time. So yeah, I will use the co-chairs as my guide, but I will own a walkthrough specifically of Block 4 needs. Yes.
Great. And then if others, give some thought to community benefits that you think would be necessary in the district, just as a grand scheme and forward-thinking agenda item for yourselves, regardless of what comes before this committee or not. All right, but give some thought to what we need here. All right. Thank you very much. Next, JD, you're on the grill now.
Another controversial subject. This is the Capstone project. I think you all know what that is. Capstone is NYU students. They accept a proposal from a community group and they research it for a semester or 10 weeks and come back. So there was a proposal made about the west side of the highway to make it a wildlife refuge and restore it to the Lenape Indians. No, that was Paul's. That's what Paul wanted, but Paul's was rejected. And instead they're going to study the west side highway and make it a bike lane or pedestrian friendly or something like that. So there's going to be a meeting, I think tomorrow or next 2 days, with the co-chairs of the land use committees, Chelsea and us, and I think what else? Waterfront committee, transportation committee. So everybody has to have 2 people from the committee to attend this. I'm going to go as co-chair. Paul is going to let me go. Joe is going because Joe was born on the west side and has lived here all his life, so he knows all about it. Joe, I think you're going for the land use committee or for another committee. I'm not sure. Do you know?
No, Jesse just asked me to attend, so that's all.
I would actually gladly attend. I bike that area more than frequently, daily, beyond frequently.
Well, Chris, the way it's structured right now, it's me and Joe going from the committee. So wait till we talk to the powers that be and see if we can include other people from the committee to go. But right now,
You can figure it out.
Well, I mean, I voted for the study, and I know that there should be a voice of yes and no. What I saw presented from the Manhattan Borough President's office wasn't exactly as it was scoped out in our vote. But as somebody who voted yes for an expansion of the bikeway and did not see an expansion of the bikeway, I would like to go and be a part of this meeting to ensure that what I voted for is actually, a part of that's potential scope of work.
I'm confused. I think this was a proposal from our board to NYU just to study the area. This is not the borough president's proposal.
Oh, okay. From what I remember, we had voted full board on it was a letter to Department of Traffic, which was to state. And we asked for a study to be done on the feasibility of removing 1 lane of traffic to expand the bike lane, to which members of this committee had voted no. I voted yes on it. And I feel, yeah.
It's not exactly the same thing at all. It's a
The
NYU master's program studying, looking stuff for us, right?
Well, it was connected.
Well, they come and they study the area. I hope they come and talk to the block associations, to the people in the neighborhood to get ideas, what they would like to see, what the community would like to see. They interact with board members. They report back and forth. That's all this is. And in 10 weeks, they submit something. So this is not the borough president thing at all. This is something totally different.
Okay, I saw the two as being one and the same, so I just felt like there'd be a balance of breadth in this particular instance. I don't know.
Chris, I'm actually in favor of this in general, but I don't even know
Phenomenal.
of which project that they're choosing, because Paul, didn't we send them a number of projects? Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, this is a much larger than just the bike lane on the west side. This has to do with what sort of neighborhood would be adjacent to a refurbished west side highway. So this involves, the reason that transportation and land use are part of the leadership on this Capstone project is because we're going to be looking at what land use changes would be necessary to revise Route 9 and make those changes. And the Capstone NYU students are going to do a study for us and say, if we want to accomplish these goals along the west side, and it could be submerge the West Side Highway and have Green Park above it. I mean, this is a much larger scale.
Or connectivity of locations from bridges and things like, it's not just this bike lane thing, it's a broader, like,
yeah,
look at it.
I appreciate the context. Now, the broader
Yeah.
context of what's been provided gives me,
yeah, it's different. It's different than the Manhattan Borough President's proposal to remove a lane of cars and put in a bike lane. That's a different, and it'll be a smaller component.
It might be a component of the whole broader thing, Chris, but it's not. This is not the thing. It's like
no, I appreciate the better bird's eye capture of the meetings. Thank you very much. But yeah, if there's availability, I'm open to attending if there is a chance.
Great, thanks, Chris. JD, you seem to not have sound again. JD,
I think it'd be further. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
As the students interact with the community and with the board, bring it back to the committee. That's all. Got it, Paul?
Anybody
there,
else?
Paul?
Yeah, you are kind of spotty there, JD. I'm not sure what's happening in your connection. So, but anybody else that has interest in this NYU Capstone project, feel free to reach out to me or JD or Joe, who's going to be part of this as well. And, we can make sure that any concerns that people have from this committee are addressed in this study. Go ahead, Brian.
I understand this is a preliminary meeting you're doing tomorrow. Will the students attend a future committee meeting to speak with us about it? I see Joe nodding his head. So fantastic. Look forward to the study.
Yeah, I suspect it's going to run much like all the other fellow programs that we've done, where the students will do a study and an analysis, come to the committees, get community input, come to the committees, both land use and transportation, talk about what they're proposing, and then do a final presentation to the full board.
And go to block associations too. They normally reach out to lots of different stakeholders.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Great, thanks. Thanks, JD. JD, you good? You look like you're having trouble with your internet, so I'm gonna just introduce David for this next step.
No, go ahead.
All right, thanks. The final item we have is, much like at the last meeting when the board had approved the housing plan, I had Joe present on sort of what does that mean to the local land use committee. The Sanitation Task Force has come up with some ideas and recommendations and guidelines for new development going forward to better manage our trash situation in our neighborhood. David served on that Sanitation Task Force and has been involved in other sanitation issues with our committee in the past. So I've asked him to kind of walk through where the task force landed and what we as a board sort of are approving and moving forward. So David, if you could.
Yes, thank you, Paul. Yeah, I don't know if we're approving anything tonight, are we? No,
No, we're just going through what did we do and what does it actually mean to those of us on this committee?
Yeah. So this committee, we had an intern from NYU work on a study of New York City's regulations about sanitation, building regulations about sanitation, and comparing them with other cities in the country and in the world. And so this is a follow-up to that study where Christine and I, as co-chairs and a group of people who joined the working group, put together some concrete recommendations about what could change in the city's regulations, and we focused much more on regulations inside the buildings, as opposed to outside, because there's a lot of brain power has been put into how to make changes to New York City's infrastructure on the outside, but much like, with Swab and other groups, but much less energy has been put into the inside of the buildings, and was our focus. It wasn't, obviously, if the inside connects to the outside, the knee bone connects to the thigh bone, so you can't just draw a hard line. But that was our emphasis. So we met with a number of city agencies, sanitation, buildings, planning. We met with some very knowledgeable people from Swab, both Bronx and Manhattan, and from Center for Zero Waste. We met with a builder, Brookfield Properties, and we even met with some equipment manufacturers. And over the course of quite a number of weeks, we came up with a plan and a proposal, and the proposal has sort of half a dozen major elements to it. And let me just list them. It's not a long number. I mean, one of the big ones was encouraging waste compacting and paper baling. I mean, it is already compacting is already required in the code, but it's done very spottily and it's not enforced. And paper baling is not required at present. So we added that. The containers, many years ago, the original law said, and still says, that containers need to be enclosed. These were the metal trash cans that woke everybody up in the morning. The law never changed, but the containers did. And now we have plastic bags. So we're not proposing to go back to the noisy metal cans necessarily, but are proposing to have rodent-proof containers rather than various kinds. And there's some images shown in the document to replace plastic bags. Now, the sanitation department, DSNY, did produce a waste management plan recently of outlining some requirements that buildings, that new buildings renovations would have to, buildings over 150 units in size, so only those, would have to submit a waste management plan, and there were some requirements in that proposal from DSNY. We found it rather insubstantial and not covering enough buildings, since it was only over 150, the projects over 150 units. So a third.
David, can I just interrupt for one quick second? Janine, I noticed that Christine Berthet is in the audience. Can you just slide her over as a panelist too? She was co-chair of this committee, the sanitation too.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Thanks. Sorry, David. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. So we're proposing to beef up that DSNY beef up the waste management plan substantially. Also, then we're proposing that buildings have, not all buildings, but buildings, and I'll get into that in a second, that buildings have space for 1 week's worth of waste. This would apply to new construction, not to a lot of existing buildings. And like I said, I'll get into some of the details of where that would apply. But that would be a way of reducing the amount of waste that's stored on the streets, which of course, I mean, that fundamentally is the whole issue that we're discussing. I kind of assumed that was a given, was reducing the piles of plastic bags on our sidewalks. both because of their impediments to pedestrians and because of rodents, et cetera. The next bullet was buildings providing a staging area where trash could be directly accessible to the street. That could be indoors and or outdoors, but it would be on private, on the building's property, not on our property, meaning public property. And then the last was putting waste out on the curb later than it is now, so that it avoids the rush hour traffic, pedestrian traffic especially, that conflicts with the bags of garbage that are set out at 3 or 4 p.m. So those are the big items. Now, they don't apply everywhere, and so there's a couple of tables here. One for new and substantially renovated buildings and another one for existing buildings. And if you look at the details of that, you'll see, first of all, they're divided into design elements and operation elements, but importantly, obviously there's a higher burden on new and substantially renovated buildings than there is on existing. That goes without saying. And also a higher burden on larger buildings than there is on smaller buildings. And I'm not going to go through each square of this these two tables, but if you take even a quick look, you'll see that, for example, small existing buildings have very limited requirements, very, very limited, whereas large new buildings have most of these, or all of them, really. So, and there's everything in between, depending on the size of the building and whether it's new or existing. So that's the gist of the proposal. There are then a list of proposed policy changes from each of the agencies: DCP, DOB, DSNY, and DOT. We've listed those. And then some additional considerations, which are sort of not in the core of the proposal, but other things to be things to be considered. The plan going forward is, well, we're going to meet with Eric Botcher shortly about this. He's been very active in the sanitation issues. And also we're going to meet with the SNY. So this is going to start to have some legs. But the other element that directly impacts this committee is a questionnaire, which I think was also in the documents. And it's a questionnaire that would go to applicants and, well, in part to educate them about these items, and then of course to ask them, what are you planning to do? And this is a way of getting them to read this document, or the document as it gets revised over the course of the next meetings. But then to sort of put their feet to the fire and ask, what are they doing to implement what's in the proposal? So that questionnaire is also available in the docs. So Christina, what have I missed? And are there any questions?
It's perfect.
Chris, and then JD.
So let me lower my hand. Yep, thank you. So I just want to thank the task force work on here. It picks up on letters that were written by this committee and by WPE over the last 6 years, specifically the request to remove garbage off our sidewalks. Christine, thank you so much. I just want everyone to keep in mind that it's a tall task. I investigated it when I was working in city council. It's falls in the realm of land use and zoning just as much as it does sanitation. So I think that is bullet point or a primary piece that falls to the heart of this committee. And I once again, I do appreciate everyone's work on this because it's essential that we begin to remediate the issue of minimum parking in basements and prioritize garbage collection and recycling in cellars of new development buildings, so that way it doesn't flood our sidewalks. Appreciate it.
JD, I saw your hand go up and down. You wanted to add something?
Yeah, on David, thank you for that. One question about storing in the basement a week's worth of garbage. In terms of health and sanitation, supposing it's not picked up after a week, is a week a long time? Is that manageable as far as you know?
Is a week a long time? You mean, I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Well,
You mean, you're asking, is a week too long, is what I think what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think so. No, I mean, obviously this, partly relates to the organics program, because in some ways the organics is really the, maybe the piece of it that could be the issue, could be the issue I think that you're trying to address. I mean,
well,
bales of cardboard aren't really a problem. And most trash isn't a problem. It's mostly the organics that creates that issue.
I guess what I'm asking, do they need special containers for organics for a week so it doesn't decompose?
Well, organics,
or whatever.
There isn't really an organics program yet in place. There's a lot of people who want to see it. So yeah, we didn't address that head on because it doesn't exist yet.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm curious.
Let me try to address that, David and JD. We were not suggesting at all that there would be less pickup. So our suggestion was same amount of pickups, but the recyclable could be another new pickup. And instead of, being that same day, it's a different day, and you have much less volume on the sidewalk. So the other thing is that we think that, for example, when it snows, everybody put the stuff out, and you have those mountains which are covered with snow. And, so the idea is to say, look, it gives you flexibility. If you have space, a little more space, then you can keep the stuff inside, and still the DSNY tells you, hey, I can pick it up tomorrow. Let's do it. Yeah. So I think the idea was to have a little more flexibility so that they can reorganize the pickup. There is no intention there to say it should be less pickup. It should be the same amount of pickup.
Right. And actually, even on that, there, one of the things that the SWAB people pointed out is that there hasn't been a lot of adjustment about.
Sorry to interrupt, David. What is SWAB, please, for new members? Thank you.
Solid
waste advisory board.
Solid waste advisory board.
Yeah.
Advisory board. Yeah.
Thank you.
And they're advisory to the council, as I understand it. So, they've been lobbying for adjusting pickups between recycling and waste to more customize that to different neighborhoods and to different realities, and actually to increase the amount of recycling pickups and reduce the amount of waste pickups in proportion to the what's being produced. And so not any reduction of the total pickups, but an adjustment of what's being picked up. And so, yes, so, along these same lines, there is, and that's discussed briefly in our document as well. So part of this is to match the pickups to the need. So yes, JD, it's not to store a week's worth of garbage in the basement.
Unless you have worms, you could have a worm farm down there. That would be.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Thanks, JD. Brian, and then Joe.
Hi. Thanks, David and Christine. Is this document available for public viewing? I was just looking through our Dropbox and couldn't find it. I was just curious to read through it.
It's on the web.
Oh, it's on CB4's?
MCB4 web now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll go there and follow up with questions if I have any.
Thanks, Brian. Joe?
Yeah, this is just for JD. Surprisingly, building code requires all trash rooms to be air conditioned now. For that very reason
Oh, yeah?
of organics. Yeah, you have to have an air conditioner in it because the
My
organic
apartment doesn't have air conditioning.
correct. And believe me, I learned this the hard way. Christine, do you remember the Chelsea NYCHA, Elliott Chelsea? We were building the garbage storage thing and it had to be air conditioned. And there was a whole concern about if it's air conditioned when the apartments aren't air conditioned. We're like, it's a code issue. No one's going to, it's like one of those big things. So it must be. And it's for organics, David, for that very reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, thanks. Thanks, David and Christine. This is much like a lot of our guidelines and policies from the board. These are practices that we want to build into our efforts, particularly with new developments, things that come before our committee. We want to think about, like we did last month, think about long-range housing planning. Now we want to add in thinking about long-range sanitation planning. So when we're looking at applications, to keep these things in mind, historic district LPC guidelines, sanitation guidelines, housing guidelines, these are things that this committee needs to be thinking through with every application that comes forward. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation. All right.
Very good.
Joe, you have your hand up.
I just want to report that tomorrow the board is meeting with the Borough President's Office, the land use folks, on some specific aspects of the affordable housing plan. And I was able to, at the HYHK bid annual meeting, talk to the land use director there at BP's office and found out they're looking specifically at the portions about the rezoning to allow residential use in the West 40s and 50s, west of 11th Avenue, that they want to talk to us about. And the specific idea of going from the 6 FAR to the 12 FAR residential cap in Hudson Yards. So I think that's a good example of when we put something out, someone picks it up, we'll see what happens with it, but at least it's going to be discussed further.
Joe, do you want to talk about today at all, or Christine?
Joe, about that. So that's in the area where, what is the zoning right now on this, in this area? How much is the zoning?
In Hudson Yards, it's very dense, of course. And so the only difference there is it's a change. It calls for only commercial and a little bit of residential. This would allow residential and commercial to happen simultaneously and get rid of that cap. And then in the West 40s and 50s, there's a height restriction of 135 feet, and it's a 5 FAR right now. And in our plan, we've talked about allowing a little bit of bonus for residential, that kind of stuff. We're trying to balance the issue in that those blocks, if there's industrial uses, to maintain them, and then to be able to build residential above.
Right. But I was talking about North Hudson Yard. What's the FAR there?
In Hudson Yard, it's the 11th Avenue corridor from 35th up to 41st Street.
Right.
Yeah, no, to 41st.
Right.
And it goes from a high of a 28 FAR, and then it goes down to a 14 FAR the further north you go. So it's supposed to decline as you're going toward the right.
So just a question for the 28 FAR, and I know there is this infamous 12 cap or whatever.
No, 6. It's a cap of 6.
No, I'm talking about the one at Albany.
Oh, yeah.
So since there is so much existing FAR, why not go to the 28?
This was discussed extensively at the Housing Committee, also at this committee, and everyone felt that that was a much larger issue. And so the goal was, in terms of Hudson Yards, and it's in the Affordable Housing Plan, just to at least achieve the 12 FAR residential. And then as that issue percolates through the state legislature over a period of time, then add our voices in as things keeps, as it moves along. But we consider this kind of low hanging fruit, Christine, to go from the 6 to the 12 right away. And I'm surprised the BP picked up on it. That's good news for us.
I liken it to, let's add in a bike lane, but we're not quite ready to put in the bus lane.
No, I mean, when you think of how much we need this
Oh, yeah.
housing, and this is an envelope which is ready to produce.
Yeah, but to tackle the state FAR cap, like as Joe is pointing out, let's at least go from 6 to 12.
And Paul, I have one more item just for the committee's information, and I just got this afternoon. I was contacted by an attorney wanting to know if the board was aware the city's looking to lease buildings on the west side of 11th Avenue between 55th and 56th Street, possibly for shelter use. This is the Mini Cooper and the BMW building. I will investigate this further, but that's late breaking in the afternoon.
That's a pretty good trade.
Huh?
Pretty good trade.
Yeah.
Remove the car.
It's shocking that Christine is opposed to the car dealership. Eliminate a car delership, Christine.
Right,
sure.
Right.
And, yeah, Chris, you have your hand up. Is it on this or something else?
It's on this. Thank you, co-chair. Joe, would this be in any way in correlation with the mayor's emergency order on the removal of land use and zoning procedures for the migrant emergency?
Well, the truth is, who knows? This administration is in a weird reactive mode. The other thing I was informed today, I had a meeting with Hudson Companies, that there's supposedly the city's going to issue an order that there will be no lotteries enforced anymore, and all vacant apartments in every building will only go to homeless referrals. I find that insane and crazy. And I think we need to just sort of figure this out as it comes day by day. I'm going to guarantee you, Chris, that some of these actions will be sued very quickly to say that you can't enforce zoning. It's an emergency. That's just like one of those, So.
Right. That I appreciate you flagging that, only because the Euler process is incredibly important. And as I've reviewed the emergency order, calling for its void during this period, which is open-ended and not subject for removal by city council, only subject to the executive office, is rather troubling. So
can you suspend charter provisions by emergency order?
It's fairly broad. And so their interpretation, their lawyers' interpretations, because of the strongman government that we're in, could be tested.
Joe, I look forward to hearing more back about that when you.
Yeah, I just got a call last night, but I just want to make people aware of it.
Thank you. And also just for everybody to be aware, Joe and I met with the Lirio team again today, and making even more progress on that MTA site development. We'll have more on that as things move along.
On the facade specifically.
All right.
What in particular about the facade?
The ongoing discussions about bricks and,
design components.
Yeah.
So the look and feel of the community as our standard business on this committee.
Yep.
Gotcha. We don't want to feel like we're being completely gentrified. We want to feel like we have a voice in the change in a meaningful way. Got it.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else? Let me just check on attendees. Nobody's. Yuhan doesn't have her hand up. Okay. Chris, your hand is back up again.
Yeah, new business, and this is just only a call out that for new members of this committee, and just for this community board, we only speak as private citizens, as community advocates, as tenant association presidents, as former candidates. We never speak to the press on behalf of Community Board 4. So if you're ever reached out to by the press with regard to business in front of this committee or the totality of the board, you should always state that you are speaking as a private citizen. You are not speaking as a member of this committee or the board, because there are always touchy subjects that come up and people will seek quote for. So please keep that in mind. And if you don't know how to respond, or you don't know what things are in reference to, if you're reached out to, please reach out to your co-chairs. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks for that reminder, Chris. And I'll tell everybody, even when I'm asked to speak on something for land use issues, I also run it past Jesse and Jeffrey as chair of the board. Because if I am representing the board, I want to make sure that the chair knows what I'm saying. All right, anything else? New business, old business? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I
Second.
heard James and Joe for the record. All in favor? Thank you all very much. David, welcome. Are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, I was going to thank you for
Welcome
your
back,
time
David.
zone assistance.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.